Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Hello again, everybody. This is Coach Griff with you here this evening. Sorry about the little bit of the technological glitches that I still am experiencing with my upload speed, is what I've been told, as there is some type of issue in the internet lines up here in the northern part of Indiana via Mediacom. But so far, so good, other than first take went right down, you know what, and we're back up and running. Like I said, you got to adapt, adjust, and improvise. And you know what? I'll take it. Indiana, 11-1, a thorough lashing of the Purdue Boilermakers in Bloomington Saturday night, and a sight to be seen with a full house on hand that came out in a cold, snowy evening there at Memorial Stadium under the lights, and Fox Sports with Tim Brando and Devin Gardner on the call. So it was a top rated bucket game, as well as Fox giving its due. And we all are very appreciative of the fact that the Indiana Hoosiers are 11-1 and would appear to be firmly seated in the college football playoffs. We are going to talk some more about that in a little bit, because right now it has been a crazy 2 weeks in the world of college football. And if you love college football, this is the time of year that it just gets better and better and better. Just remember, we're going to talk about our sponsor here at Hoosier Football Tailgate on Believe. It is Bet Online, which continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL, which I'm a firm believer of NHL hockey, as I'm a little bit of a hockey nut on the side, as well as UFC. Head on to BetOnline today. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. And thank you for their continuous support. Remember that that promo code BLEAV, you'll get an extra bonus on your first deposit with them, and appreciate their continued support of the Hoosier Football Tailgate and all the affiliates that have been associated with us throughout the year. You can find those on my link tree in the bio section on X, on Facebook and Instagram, as well as our website, HoosierTailgate.com, and look for the shop there. And if you're looking for that Christmas gift, no place better than to go and get that code from Fanatics to utilize in their store with all the things that they have that is IU-based. Fans Edge and Fanatics are the two online entities that we do have a affiliation agreement with. If you would happen to use those, by all means, we appreciate that, and we will receive some type of commission for any and all of those sales. Got a couple other things working on currently. Hope to bring to you here prior to the holidays as well. So if you do purchase something from any of those online stores, as well as our online store there at HoosierTailgate.com, we are greatly appreciate your support of Hoosier Tailgate here. As always, please feel free to add into the comment section during this show. We love to take any and all questions or comments as we go along, as well as anything that you may have a question about specifically. By all means, let's put it up and get rolling. But any way you look at this thing today, from an Indiana standpoint, Nobody could have ever thought in a million years that a hire of Curt Cignetti, which was about a year ago at this time, was going to transition into a head coach that came in with a little bravado, a little bit of entertainment value in how he said things and spoke his heart, I guess you could say, turn into one of the, if not the greatest season in Indiana football history, going 11-1, and that only loss being to number 2 Ohio State, who, oh, by the way, the sky is falling as the Buckeyes lose to Michigan at home, 4th straight year, where Michigan was a 29-point underdog, and they go into the Big House and win in what I would say had to be the craziest game I have ever seen between Indiana and Michigan and Ohio State. It was unbelievable, from Michigan's interception that their quarterback threw to the Ohio State defensive end who was standing on the goal line. It hit him between the two threes. It was just one of those games that you just kind of like, what is going on today? Because it was crazy. And then to start the second half, Henderson letting the ball drop on the kickoff at the 5-yard line and kind of nonchalantly really not doing anything until the last second. And they took the opening second half kickoff, Ohio State did, from their own 5. It was just a very head-scratching day in college football, from fights at center at the 50-yard line throughout the day in college football. Ohio State, Michigan had their tussle. North Carolina State. You had Florida State in what was their little 50-yard line brawl, I guess you could say. It was one crazy thing in that regard, and it's just was an amazing day in college football. And then to go under the lights at Memorial Stadium under the snow, and Indiana looking like the Indiana team on both sides of the football that we were accustomed to seeing up through the first half of Michigan, but the last 6 quarters of offensive football that we've seen from them wasn't to the standard, you would say, for Indiana. And it was good to see the offense get on track against the Boilermakers. And as if you haven't been following along with all this, as you know, right now is that Ryan Walters was dismissed as the head football coach at Purdue after 2 seasons there with the Boilermakers, after serving as Brett Bielema's defensive coordinator at Illinois, a very storied DC from Illinois. He had all the pedigree in terms of who he had worked with and what he had done. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out there at Purdue for Coach Walters. He will walk away with $9 million in his pocket unless they negotiate a lower settlement, kind of what Indiana ended up doing with Tom Allen. But like I've always said, it's don't feel sorry for the head coaches, because they're well protected in their structure of their contract to get their money unless they do something totally stupid and cause them NCAA penalties and such. It's those assistant coaches and their families that this impacts the most. And having been there myself when I was a young, naive Division I coach at Ball State with a wife and 2 young kids, I understand that we call today Black Monday in the world of college football as coaches, because a lot of things usually happen or transpire between that last game of the season and today. If changes are going to be made. Mac Brown out at North Carolina. You've got the situation now at Purdue. Those are the 2 big ones that come to mind as of right now. I know that Ryan Day is always going to be under fire, or whoever is the Ohio State coach. If you don't not beat Michigan, especially at home, when you're a 29-point favorite, you are going to feel the heat very quickly, I should say, as the head coach at Ohio State. And like I've always said, we don't worry about those other teams because we have nothing to do with them other than respect who they are and what they are and the fans. Even if they talk, their crap, let them talk, because there's no sense getting into a pissing match on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you may go to have these discussions, because you're never going to get through to some of those individuals that, for whatever reason, they don't want to hear any other aspects of someone's opinion in this case. But it was an interesting day. I do not think Ryan Day is under any jeopardy, I would say, at this point. You're talking a guy who lost a rivalry game, and I've said all along, take the records and whatever and throw them out. And now that doesn't always mean that it's going to result in some major upset like that was, even though it's Michigan and they were sick. They were not the Michigan that was a year ago. For them to go into the Big House and get that win, it not only put a black eye on Ohio State, but it does elevate Indiana's win against Michigan. And because those happened within a 2-week period of playing each other, it's a very good sign for an Indiana perspective. That win gets elevated a little bit more when they go and knock off the number 2 ranked team in the country, irregardless of record. So I do think that will be a big plus in IU's favor as we go through everything that we talked about last week and even this week, as we head into basically a bye week. Now, a couple things: Hoosiers do move up a spot in both polls. I think they're both 9 in the AP poll and the coaches poll, as well as what I've seen to date and all this. But it's one of those things that, and I think Tim Brando, who did call the game on Saturday there in Bloomington. I had the privilege to be at Bloomington on Saturday. It worked out for me after doing the state high school state championship games on Friday that I was able to get to Bloomington to see everything live and in person. And I wanted to be there because, like I've said, my former assistant coach, Brian Haynes, I wanted to, see him in action and was able to do that. I did have a great conversation with Tim Brando, by the way, that we happened to be in the quote unquote press box eating line. And we were discussing all things about college football. But it was a remarkable evening there in Bloomington, and it was something to behold. And texting with my son throughout the entire night there as we go better, as we went through that ball game. And let's see here what we got. I think we got one. Yeah, Brian, that's true. That's a true statement. Michigan has gotten better as they went through the year. Now, we've always said, and I've always said, they've had probably one of the better defenses in the front 7 that you're going to find throughout college football. Their 2 defensive tackles are, top round draft picks. I mean, those guys are world beaters. Michigan's shortfall happened in their secondary. That wasn't as good as it was in previous years, and maybe some question marks at linebacker. But when Ohio State doesn't even try to test them on the outside to the extent that you would think, they kept trying to run it right up the middle, and Michigan was just hammering it. And I told you I've gone against Coach Martindale back in a few years ago when we were making our way up the ranks, and very good defensive coordinator. He is not going to let you run the football down his throat. There's just not going to happen. So his game plan for them probably caught him by surprise, to be quite honest with you, that they were not going to try something else. But again, we knew the caliber of that Michigan defense. Their offense, because of their lack of production at the quarterback position all year, they got in just enough of that production that it didn't hurt them. And it didn't help Ohio State missing 2 chip shot field goals that took a sure 6 points off the board. And just like we can sit around and say, if and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. Same thing could be applied to Ohio State. Had he hit both of those field goals, it's a different game, totally different game. And we know that analogy very well because we just sat here 2 weeks ago and talked about the 14 points Indiana gave Michigan, and you just can't do that. Well, you cannot miss 2 chip shot field goals, especially from a kicker that Ohio State has. That was a complete and utter shock. And I think that had a lot to do with their psyche on Saturday when he, basically peed down his leg and missed 2 chip shots. Now, I don't want to be overly critical of the young man, and I hope that he was able to find his way out of Columbus for a while, because I know how that fan base is, and it's unfortunate, but I'm sure he took a lot of ridicule on that night after that game. So, but Indiana stays where they're at. My impression of the polls, and this goes back to the Brando discussion that we had, it's when in the day and age of the college football playoffs now, the AP poll especially, and to a degree the coaches poll, have in some respects become insignificant in some ways. And you can see the agendas being pushed and narratives that want to be pushed. Now, some of them were deflated when teams bowed out because they got, to pick up the 3rd loss or lost a bad game, a la Miami. In some respects, it's a crazy thing, but you can see some of the jockeying of some of the brand names that we see each and every year amongst the top 10, still trying to, paint a narrative that doesn't, fit what is being seen on the field against, the game between the white lines. It's just like, explain to me how Indiana loses 5 spots in both polls, losing to the number 2 ranked team in the country at their place. Okay. And then they lose their 5 spots as well when they lose to their biggest rival at home. And I know that they should win that. But to drop them all the way to 7th, it's no better than what they did to Indiana, dropping them all the way back to number 10 a week ago. So I just don't buy some of these agendas, and that's what Mr. Brando was basically alluding to when it comes to the AP polls and some of these coaches polls, that they've become so unreliable to the extent that some people just start ignoring them. And now, do they have some say in the college football playoff, rankings and things of that nature? I'm sure they do, probably more so coaches than the AP writers, but I would hope enough of them would be able to see that, wait a minute, why is this? And, where are they getting this at? So that's why I think Indiana's firmly in. If you look at the matrix and their numbers with the strength of schedule, opponent strength of ranking, as well as being the dominant team that they've been, there's no reason why Indiana isn't in the college football playoffs. And I could probably argue that they should be at least as high as 7th and be contending to host the game over Georgia or Tennessee, from the strict standpoint that those teams have 2 losses, and potentially Georgia could have 3 if they get beat by Texas in the SEC championship. I could argue that Indiana should host, and because their matrix and everything in front of them is going to reflect that reward. Getting in the playoffs is not a guarantee because you have a bulldog as a mascot or a hound, or because you're from the SEC or wherever you're at. It should be by what you produced on the field with the schedule you had conference-wise and how that all played out. And for Indiana to win 11 football games with only one loss, I could argue that they should be a host in the first round of the playoffs against any one of those SEC teams, but make them come here as opposed to anyone having to go there. So, but that's, again, an opinion that I have. It doesn't matter my opinion or anyone else's opinion. Yeah, I get that aspect of thing, Brian, with the favorite over Michigan. I do not question that, but I guess I look at that rivalry as being it's so it's one of those traditional rivalries that I just don't think that the records mean anything into those teams, because it's been proven through the years that some of the things that happened on Saturday, especially at Ohio State, have happened even to Michigan when Ohio State was not that highly ranked team or even ranked, and going into the Big House and winning there years and years ago. And Bo Schembechler did that in 1968 when they beat Ohio State, and Woody Hayes was about had to be carted off the field almost because he was in shock of what happened. So I do get it. I don't think and necessarily think that this dropping them as much as they did, I do, and I don't understand it. But then again, you have two losses, and you lost to Oregon, which was one that they forgave, but they cannot forgive a loss to Michigan in that regard. In Indiana's case, is like we said during the year, they were going to have to win them all to get a very good seed in the tournament, as well as being highly ranked. If they had lost any game, irregardless of the name, it was probably going to be a big hill to overcome, because everybody's has a bad opinion of Indiana in the terms of its football and tradition and things of that nature. So, with all that, yeah, I think this is a pretty good, all the teams that are bowl eligible, including, the Big Ten, is like you're saying there, with as many as they are. And thankfully, because there's going to be a lot of bowls out there that I'm not quite sure who all is going to qualify for bowls out of all the different conferences right now. But I think in the Big Ten, there's going to be a lot of them. And that 6-6 record, or 7-5, or however falls on the matrix and things like that, is going to help the Big Ten in a lot of ways. So that's always a good thing. Let's see. Let's move on here. I don't want to get too sidetracked with some stuff. Again, Curtis Rourke, what can you say about the young man's ability and what he's done all year long? 6 touchdowns, tied a single game record. I know one of them was Roberson, and I can't remember who that was actually against a few years ago. But again, Curtis's day at the office was superb. He finished the highest rated efficiency passer in the nation. He's had a tremendous year, and I'm just glad that, Coach Cignetti was able to get him from Ohio University. There was a lot of suitors for him. And I just put out today on my X feed, especially some shorts about our conversation that I had with Curtis 11 months ago, right when he was getting ready to come to Indiana. And I did link that as well on my X page, if you want to go back and, rewatch it, because it was pretty interesting when I went back and did that, to listen to why Indiana. And I think it was very interesting to hear it, now as opposed to then, because then we were just kind of blind faith in the process. So that was, if you want that is on my X page at Hoosier Tailgate, and I retweeted on my Coach Griff 55 X feed too. With that, so again, a big day for Curtis with everything, as well as this situation in the Big Ten, because it's an interesting dynamic how they figure, why Penn State over Indiana. And ultimately, it comes down to what was the winning percentages of the teams that you beat. In other words, what was their one-loss record on the year? And the two teams that helped Penn State over the hump were Illinois and it's escaping me right now. But Illinois was one of them because how they finished record-wise that ultimately catapulted them. Oh, Minnesota. I believe Minnesota was the other one that catapulted them up above Indiana in terms of those teams that they played with everything. And as we look at that, that's kind of how they broke that tiebreaker. And it's an interesting way to do it. I understood it because they got to that fourth tie breaking. And when you get down there in those type of arenas where you get down to the fourth or fifth tiebreaker in everything, it gets a little bit sideways. In the old days, I think the Big Ten settled this. I think it was when they went to the Rose Bowl. It used to be who was the last team to go. So that was somehow a way they used to figure out some of that. But Indiana came out on the short side of that. Honestly, as well, it'd be interesting to get your guys' and gals' opinion out there about all this. Would it have been better for Indiana to play in the Big Ten championship and risk a second loss and potentially falling out? Or where they're at, getting a couple weeks now to prepare for a game, whoever it may be, even if it's on the road. So if you want to put something in there in the chat about that, that's fine as well. The way I look at it, and if you've heard some of the chatter with SMU and Clemson, if SMU loses to Clemson, many think that they are out, which that's not what the committee said when it came to conference championships, that they were not going to hold that against a team. Now, I don't know if that's because Clemson has got 3 losses or whatever it is, especially losing to their in-state rival, South Carolina, or is it because Alabama may be lurking in a position that if SMU would lose that game, and the debate comes down to, is SMU better suited or Alabama? We all know what's going to happen there in some respects, but that is a dynamic that would be interesting had Indiana been the one that would have played Oregon with a chance for the Big Ten championship, or risk the fact that does that ultimately been held against them if that wouldn't have worked out in a win category, or is it better to be on the sidelines awaiting a opponent to play in the first round of the college football playoffs? All right, just a couple things here. Let me see what we got here. Think that we're a better buy with, I agree with that. That's kind of how I feel with that. Brian, bring that question up a little bit later, and I'll try to figure it out. He was requesting, can IU do better, or how can IU do better handling loud crowd noise going forward, things of that. And I'll try to give you somewhat of an answer there as I scroll back through this. The portal season. We're going to talk a little bit about that in recruiting here in a second, about what that all entails as we come upon that, because even though there's a game a game in 3 weeks for Indiana, recruiting doesn't stop, and there are portal items that need to be addressed for Indiana as it pertains to next class in the recruiting area. And as we already see, there's a lot of guys already entering the portal. I've all saw a couple of Purdue guys already entering the portal with the change in staff with all that. We talked a little bit about this at the top as it pertains to Ohio State and the sky is falling. As you can see, it's, part of the job description at Ohio State, the scrutiny that you're going to be under, good, bad, or indifferent. And Ryan Day is one of those guys that has not won in 4 years, and that's not going to make the Nadies very happy. And I do personally feel that he's going to have a real strong showing in the college football playoffs for him to get through to next season. Just the pulse I'm kind of getting out there in the coaching world, or the kind of underlying tones that are being spoken about that situation at Ohio State. Even though he has the support of the administration, we don't know how much support he has of the administration, because there may be some big time money guys that come in and say, hey, that's enough. So and then when we get to the ends here tonight, we will take a look at what Indiana did well in this 66-0 romp. It was a complete overmatching game. As we talked about, Indiana never gave Purdue any hope. We talked about not giving them a chance to feel like they got a chance and had blood in the water per se, and then all of a sudden you're in a dogfight with a team that you should beat. And that's what happened at Ohio State and Michigan. Quite honestly, when Ohio State was not in a position to convert, kick field goals or whatever, they kept giving Michigan a reason to hope. And as you saw, it became a dogfight that they ultimately lost. And that's what I mean in these type of games. When you are when you have the better ball club, be it record, be it roster, what you have versus what they have, roster, athletic wise, all that stuff, and you give a team that should not even be close to you any hope on the day, and all of a sudden there's blood in the water, you are in a dogfight. And it's that's what happens when you don't do the right things in that regard. So we'll take a look at that in a second. Let's see here. Let's head on out to the statistical aspect of this game. Let's take a quick peek at it. As you can see, it was a total game dominance by Indiana in all statistical categories. We talked about needing to run the football the way they had been running it prior to that. I saw a lot of things that I almost gave a standing ovation with the creativity. We had reverses, we had speed sweeps, we had the counter game, we had the power game, inside outside zone. A full mixture of run plays as well as complement type of plays. That showed the creativity that Coach Shanahan and the offense had shown throughout the year, and an offensive line that totally looked like we would expect them to, or what we were prior to Evans's injury on the year. But 233 yards rushing was a masterful job there. A lot of big chunk plays, especially in the passing game. Surratt had at least 3 that I can think of, if not more. 349 yards, 582 yards of total offense in all of this, as well as what you see there, holding them to 13 yards rushing and only 54 yards passing. And a passing team like Purdue that had been averaging about 200 a game. The defense was just remarkable. And they've been that way all year long. And you got to give them credit for that. They did not convert 1 third down. I've never seen that. They did not convert 1 third down on the evening. Now, they were 1 for 1, I believe, on 4th down, similar to what Indiana was, but Indiana was able to get a +4 in the turnover margin, and even in the return game, with the limited number of attempts that Indiana had, it ended up kind of being a little bit of a wash in that regard because they were so over the top in other categories. They got 17 points off of turnovers, should have been more. And they were 75% in red zone touchdowns on Saturday. And then add to this mix, yes, Brian, thanks for reminding me that, they did run the fake punt that came into play in the game, and that was good to see. With all that, I think was, again, I think it was just A, to put it on tape, and B, they gave him the look that maybe Indiana has always had the green light on to run that. And you have to have a special look to do what they did, kind of like what Coach Franklin talked about when they ran their fake punt against Minnesota. They had it called like 3 or 4 times during the year and ended up checking out of it because it wasn't the look they were looking for. So they got the look that they were looking for. I thought they were going to run it earlier in the game, but I could see why they checked out of it. So it was a smart call. But again, as you know, when things are rolling for you, man, it's like, as a play caller especially, it's almost like, what do you want to run? Because everything's working. Let's run this. Let's run that. And it's like, okay, check this off, check that off. And it's one of those fun games where whatever you call as the play caller works. And that's the most thrilling thing to be a play caller in. Now, flip it onto the other side where Coach Walters was calling the offense for Purdue and has been for the last 3 or 4 weeks. That is so demoralizing because you can't pee a drop. It didn't matter what he called. They were losing yards, and very seldom did they gain yards. I think the Claire kid, he had a couple catches, but he was non-significant. He's probably their best player, and he was a non-factor in that game. So, let's see here. What was that? Okay. Surprised they pulled Card. No, I wasn't. As a matter of fact, I thought they would have played Brown earlier in the game because he gave them a little bit more opportunity potentially to do their zone read stuff, because that's kind of what he gave them in the mobility factor, that he could run the football and added that dynamic into the game. But I was surprised it took them as long as they did. I thought they would have inserted him earlier as a factor in the total game plan, because what he had shown against Illinois and some other teams, that was their only hope in that ball game. So, but no, I was not. I was just surprised they didn't put him in sooner in that regard, with that stuff as well. Let's see here. Let's go back over here to that. Take a quick look at the AP poll that did come out, and it's similar to the coaches poll, maybe a couple different things there. Ohio State dropped to 7th. Texas moved up. Penn State moved up, of course. Then you have Notre Dame. And then you've got the 3 two-loss teams that you would call the traditional, quote-unquote, powerhouses, Georgia, Tennessee, and Ohio State in there. Georgia, if they lose to Texas, will be a 3-loss team, and I do think they're going to be in the playoffs. If they lose to Texas, I do think they drop backward. Now, I don't think they'll drop any further than 7th in that category, if that were to happen, moving potentially Tennessee and Ohio State up a spot. But that would be my guess and only guess there. It's interesting, Notre Dame being number 4, even though they do not have a conference to play in, nor do they play in a conference championship. So they're kind of get the Indiana treatment in that regard. They get to stay at home and warm up to get ready to host a game up in South Bend, which should be a great atmosphere come the playoffs in that regard. SMU, we talked a little bit about them and what some of the chatter has been, even though they're going to be a 8th ranked in the AP poll, and if that would hold true into the college football poll, they would be a 9 seed, with Boise State being the one that automatically, if they win their championship this week against UNLV, will be a team that would get a automatic bye as a conference champion and the highest ranked group of 5 school. I think that's how that all works, is that they get that in there because that's kind of how they carried that over from the previous years. Then they've got Alabama in at 3, and then of course Arizona State there at 10-2. Probably one of the hottest teams that's been the last part of the season. Kind of, you could throw South Carolina into that category. They play Iowa State in the Big 12 game, so only one of those teams will get in from that conference. And SMU or Clemson from the ACC is going to earn a way into the conference or the college football playoffs. The thing with SMU that's interesting is that if that's the case and they're in jeopardy of being dropped out of the college football playoffs, that is not how this all started with the discussion around the SEC, because it was brought up, is that if an SEC team, would lose in the college football playoffs, would that leave them in jeopardy of not making it? Now, the answer was vague, but what they said is that the committee valued a team that made their conference championship, and sort of with innuendo and reading between the lines in some of these quotes and conversations that you see on the ESPN college selection college football playoff show, is that it would not jeopardize them from being dropped from the college football playoffs. So now Clemson's in their driver's seat, of course. They've got, I think, 3 losses, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to double check that. I may be wrong on that. But for SMU, if they were to lose to them, there's some talk that they are a quote-unquote bubble team at this moment in time. So we'll have to see how that all comes out in all the polling and stuff with all this. But it's going to be an interesting, and then of course, like I said, Alabama's sitting right there. I'm not quite sure why Alabama at 9-3 is there when you lose to Vanderbilt, even though Vandy proved to be a pretty decent team. But at the time they played them, they were not something that you would consider an on-fire SEC team. And you lose at Vanderbilt, and then you go to Oklahoma and get your doors completely blown off. That one to me is, I just don't understand how Alabama's in the conversation at 9-3. I just don't. And I'm not saying that they're a bad team or anything like that, but at some point in time, enough is enough. I mean, you've had 12 weeks or 12 games to show your resume, and you're 9-3, and you lost to some teams you shouldn't be losing to. I just don't see how that bodes well for them being in the college football playoffs, just because they're Alabama. And to me, I just don't get it. But that's me in that regard. So, that is kind of what it is as we look at this. I know that we have been talking a little bit, too, about, before we get into the rest of the stuff with the Purdue game, before we put it to bed, is recruiting. And, with that, but let me kind of put a bow on this with everything. With these college brackets and stuff like this, I know the biggest scenario that I have seen thus far, if as it was held today or whatever, it would appear that it would look like, based on some projections that I've seen, that Indiana would travel to Georgia to play Georgia there inside the hedges there in at the University of Georgia. Now, that's where, to me, with the team that Indiana's had, I just don't understand why you're giving Georgia the home field. I really don't. And again, that's me looking at it maybe with a little bit of bias, I guess you could say, but you got to value the season in that regard, and not doing that is kind of defeating the point in that. Okay. Yeah, Bama has too bad. John said PSU, if Penn State beats Oregon, that kind of throws a monkey wrench into where everyone goes to play. Yeah, it could. It really could, because you would think that if that would happen, Oregon, I don't know if they drop out of the top 4, though. That's the thing. They may go from 1 to 3, or Texas goes to 1 and Penn State goes to 2. I mean, that's the only way I could see that, but I just don't know with that, all that. And I don't disagree at all, John, that Penn State could beat Oregon. That defense that Penn State has, and I think Altmaier's playing really good with everything, and some of the creativity of what they're doing offensively with their tight end and getting the ball in his hands as much as possible. Yeah, who knows? That could be a deciding factor in that game, is Penn State's how they're playing and how their defense is playing with all that. But yeah, I would say if Indiana goes to Georgia in that type of matchup, I think Indiana's probably a 10 to 14 point underdog. As crazy as that sounds, I just think that's what it would be. And maybe more, but I just think, when you talk about that environment, while it'd be great to go play in it, I think it's kind of at a disadvantage for Indiana based upon the year that they have, that you're giving Georgia, who, if they lose to Texas in that game, then it's, to me, you're rewarding them for what? To me, it just doesn't make sense when you have the season. But anyway, with all that. But the other thing was what let's see here. Let's go back here real quick. Not that one, dummy. The recruiting aspect of it is what I wanted to talk about here quickly. And this is kind of the commitment list, because early signing date is Wednesday with everything. And yes, Robert, yeah, Texas did get manhandled by Georgia, so that would be the interesting dynamic with those two playing again. But Indiana right now has 22 hard commitments that will potentially be signing on Wednesday as being early signing date, which has now become the de facto national signing date, even though they still reserve the February deadline. Anyway, the Baldwin kid was a huge recommit. We talked about that much before. The Burns kid is a player. Indiana has got a strong-looking freshman class potentially coming in. Now, they do not have a quarterback in this class per se as of right now, with everything. With Juju Lewis committing to Colorado, that was kind of their one big hope, as if they could get him, as talented as he is, to come, they would take him, and he decided to go out to Colorado with Dion, and I don't think they will move on a quarterback unless some of these teams that have had coaching changes would potentially bring available, like Tyler Cherry a year ago became available when Duke made, when Duke had a change in staff, when Elko went to Texas A&M. But right now, Indiana, 48th overall in that regard, moving up from, I believe they were like 61st at one point, but a pretty strong looking class at this point in time. Highly rated, what we would say 3 stars. They have 1 4-star, and that is Mr. Baldwin here. We'll see what all transpires on Wednesday, as there's always that potential surprise when you talk about all this. But I like the class. The Hall kid, the D lineman that's from Tennessee, I like him. I like the Bond kid as well. Think he's going to be a heck of a ball player. Let's see here. The Kendrick kid that's out of Florida, I think is going to be good. They got the big lineman, Evan Parker, that's right here at home, and Carmel, who's a good-looking kid. I do like their class overall. I think it addresses a lot of things that they need to address from a foundation standpoint that they can build around last year's class that they had to throw together with the change and stuff. So I do like their class overall. All the websites are, pretty similar in that regard with some of these rankings, as you can see here by the columns, Rivals, ESPN, 247 Sport, and On3. With all that, I do not know right now where they all stand with some of, any of these guys that are potentially decommits from other institutions because of changeovers and such. Who knows what that may all come up to. Okay, quarterback. Yeah, I do think they will look for a quarterback potentially in the portal that, if he suits their needs and provides them a experienced quarterback to come in and compete, that is a definite possibility. I do think Taven has a lot of upside, and now that he's been in the system for a year, with all that, being a good future for him. I was glad to see him get in the game Saturday and do some things that he can do because of his athleticism. John, how does the 105 roster limit fit? Well, what I'm hearing with the new rules and how that all is going to play out here, and we'll know more probably right after the first of the year, after the conventions and stuff, I'm being told that the roster size will be limited to 100. There will be no more 105, and there will be no more walk-ons. It will be 100 total squad size of full ride scholarships to be a part of a ball club. Now, how does this impact the kids that are there now? It's going to impact a lot of kids. And unless they do some type of grandfathering that, the 100 limit size doesn't go into effect until, 3 years from now. But there may be some kids that are in a walk-on category that either they're going to have to put on scholarship and be a part of the 100, or they're going to say that they're going to have to find somewhere else. And that's hard to do when you're 11-1 and everybody's is a part of that. But that's what I'm hearing. It's going to be 100 squad members, no walk-ons, all 100 are on scholarship, and nothing will change as it pertains to the collectives. They will still be outside the scope of the university. with the NIL stuff and whatever else they've got going on there. So just like Indiana did a lot with NIL and the collectives that they have this past year, I'm sure they're going to hit it pretty hard again. So if you want what you saw all year, I don't care if it's a $25 donation to one of the collectives or $25,000 donation. That is what it's going to take, a pretty good tool chest to be a competing factor in a conference like the Big Ten. And I'm telling you, they're all going to load up with the dollars. And that's one of the big problems with Purdue right now. They do not have a great collective and NIL situation at Purdue, and they're going to have to address that. And that's what kind of caught, really in some respects, Walter's his job, because they just didn't do a very good job in it. And a lot had to do with the resources that he did not have to work with. So we'll see what all that involves with things of that nature. But that is what I'm hearing. We'll get more of that. Remember, Wednesday is national signing or early signing period. I don't know. I have not seen anything as of yet as it pertains to what Indiana is planning on doing as far as a release and that type of deal. And it also involves the portal is in that early category too. So even though Indiana may be playing in 3 weeks, a big part of this next couple weeks per se is going to be recruiting and portal guys. So it's going to be a busy time for the staff. They're not going to have much time to enjoy what they did in the season, getting prepared for the next step in the college football playoffs, as well as recruiting signing date for Wednesday to make sure everybody is I's are dotted and T's are crossed, as well as entertaining potential portal guys. So we'll see what all that entails as we move forward here. Let me see what I can get pulled up here of this game on Saturday quickly and not go through it in case if guys want to do some questions and things of that nature. Let's see if I can get this pulled up. That doesn't look good. Ooh. Let's see if I can get this reapplied. And maybe we won't have any video because it's not being able to pull it up because of my stupid internet that's crazy. Let's see here. And we'll have to see here real quick because it was working earlier and it's not working now, which doesn't. If you guys got questions while I'm throwing this together, by all means, fire away. There we go. Hey, looky there. We get a little lucky. Or you guys may say, oh, crap, he's going to do this again. I'm going to let some of this roll and make sure it's working properly. This is the first sack of the game, and we all got a big pit in our stomach when we saw this one because this is all on my man here. It's all him. He stops wrong, and that's where they get him on this loop, on this twisted blitz. So that one hurt. It's hard for Curtis to react to that, being that it's the backside and it's just a bad thing. Here's the first reverse, and this is the creativity. They look like they're going to run a counter back to the boundary as you see the Garden tight end pulling. Then Horton puts the brakes in, and they do it from a condensed formation to reduce the edge out here. So what I mean by reducing the edge is by having my man here squeeze down, it reduces these guys so you can gain the edge quicker. And that's what they do here with the flip back, and great block there on the outside by Price. Horton getting some work done, and down the sideline he goes. So another great play there by Indiana. Here's the quick pitch that we haven't seen for a while, where you're pulling the tackle and cracking with the wide receiver. Watch the block by the wideout, then these guys don't get enough credit because of the job that they do, which is right here on the crack block. But the wideouts have done a heck of a job all year blocking, and that goes to Coach Shanahan and his philosophy with those guys. They've all been tough. Now, this is a new wrinkle they showed because they had been putting Lawton back here, but that's Ellison, and we've got the line already drawn. This is basically a one-back power play, and he's going to walk in the end zone, and it's beautiful because you get to see all the down blocks there and how that secures that inside gap. That's what you got to do down there. You got to block back and secure your inside gap. Horton does a great job there at tight end. That's a tough block to take that guy and wash him down, and then you get the guard hitting right there, and, man, exactly how you want to run it, tight to the ass of the puller and walking in the end zone. So that was a great play. This is one of another sack situation that this one, I thought he could get rid of it. Now, they challenge him. They go man-free, and they're bringing some heat, and we get caught on a twist on the inside. So watch up here because this guy's picking Caddick, and that pick right there takes that guy, the looper, which causes the problem, and that's what leads to the sack there. That was after the Walker interception that we had the missed field goal. Here's a great check down by Rourke. He did want to throw it over the top, but he checks it down. Very good there. Great protection. And, again, down here, this is another good one. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Because what happens here is Curtis recognizes it's a zero blitz because here's the free safety. He's down here. You see these guys that are across the board. So he knows right now he's going to max protect it and keep the tight end in. And you see him, he's making the check now. But here's the matchup he wants. And he does a great job of doing what we call a quick 5-step drop to buy some time so the route can be ran. And it's a great job and a great route, great pickup. Boom. He makes him look bad. Easy touchdown. That was just a great thing. This is a little bit from the end zone look of it. When they're bringing a zero blitz, it was a great job. The right tackle basically had two guys that he blocked. This is, I'm going to move to the defense here after this one. This is just a great job protection and a great job of Rourke buying time and hitting Surratt, who was running a dig route, and he saw Rourke break, came out of his route and did a great job with all that. Let's see if I can get to some defensive stuff down here. Yeah, here's a couple defensive stuff that, again, there's just nobody open. These quarterbacks, that's the first interception by Walker. Hudson Card didn't have any time to really find anybody. Nobody was open. Same thing here with Brown. They dump it, and Pons and all of them are right there to make the tackle. Just a complete dominating performance by the D. A dominating performance by them. Here's the first play of the second half. This is Brown in. They're running counter. This guy does I think this is Kamara up here at the top. He does a great job. It may be Carr, but they do a great job of squeezing there, and then this ball just gets dropped. I don't know why he thought he was pulling it or whatever, but again, the dam had broken, and it was not good for Purdue after that. And as we know, Indiana has seen these type of games where it's ugly from the start, and it doesn't get any better. Again, pressure, Walker, boom. I mean, this defense, the way they've played all year, and Coach Haynes is also a Bryant Awardee nomination for this year. Just a great job Saturday of doing what they did. So Indiana really did a great job with all that. So if any questions you guys want to fire here, as we got maybe a couple more minutes. I don't want to keep everybody too late. Sometimes I go way too long, and I'm glad you guys' attention is still there towards the end. But again, we will not know until tomorrow night kind of the idea of where Indiana is going to be seated. And then we're going to have to wait another week to see what all happens in these championship games upcoming this week. And I think John alluded to it earlier. Penn State is fully capable of beating the number one ranked team, Oregon. And that in itself can throw a big wrinkle into it. Remember, Brian is part of SIG's new package and talking about paying, whether it's Coach Haynes, whether it's Coach Shanahan, whoever it may be. Coach Signetti has an $11 million kitty of money that he does not need any upper management approval to tap into. Doesn't need the signature from Dolson or Pam Whitten, the president. It's at his disposal when and how he chooses to use it. So Indiana will not lose somebody because of money. They may lose somebody. It's inevitable sometimes, but you've got a staff that's been together for a while. It would have to be an awful, awful great opportunity for the young coach to say, I'm going, because the grass is not always greener on the other side. The crowd noise thing. Well, the one thing that a lot of people will do, and I did not like how they handled it with the guard, because I thought that was a little bit of a tip. What a lot of people will do, this is where the leg movement came pretty popular that Bernie Kosar used to use way back when Cleveland, days, where they would lift the leg or the foot, and that would signal to the center, hey, I'm ready, I'm done with all the calling. And then the center would snap the ball, and they would usually work out a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi snap, or whatever that may be. With the offensive line, the wide receivers should never move because they're always looking at the ball, as the running back should never move until they see the ball snap. They're right there, like the quarterback. So that's one way to do it. If you're in a rush and you've got the time, the leg pump is what I'm referencing. Correct, Brian. If you see the clock, the play clock running down, and you got to have the ball right now, they usually have a code word, or he's really clapping his hands or doing something to alert the center, I've got to have the ball. But that's probably the best way to do it, and giving the leg pump and then the center a basic 1 potato, 2 potato, or however you want to time it up, that everybody kind of has that rhythm, is probably the best way to do it, even though it's still a gesture. With that, it's still, you still have to figure out ways to do some things, faking and, a leg pump, or if it's all the right side leg and all of a sudden I come up and use the left leg, we're going to do some type of false cadence account that we're trying to get them to jump. So hold your water type of deal. And you use code words a lot. You'll use code words. And sometimes it forces the quarterback where he has to go up into the line of scrimmage to make his calls and then come back to his normal depth. So that he has, Bamba with not doing his, 2 illegal procedures. Although the one at Ohio State was BS, but there's ways to get around it so you're not using something that's too overly obvious with that, and it still uses that silent cadence type of deal. So I think they can work around it with some of that, and they'll have a plan that will be fully vetted and implemented over the next 3 weeks, and guessing where they're going to potentially go, and they'll have a chance to work it for more than just what they need to do. So that will all take care of itself. So I have no worries in that department. I do believe that they have a plan already, and they're going to implement it and take care of what they need to take care of, so that they're not doing anything with that. I don't necessarily think that will be a problem no matter where they play at. One last question I got earlier: what should be done to the teams that were trying to implant their flag on the opposing team's signia at the 50-yard line that caused all the fights and brawls to break out and such, and that type of stuff? The thing that I think is going to have to be done, because now we're paying these guys, and some of these guys are making money, that if you're involved in some type of unsportsmanlike conduct in a game like that, where you are the antagonist and you're doing something that is over the line per se, fine them. Not only fine the schools, but fine the players that are involved, because they're all going to be getting something. So it may make them think twice before doing something like that, if it's going to hurt them in the pocketbook. So, I mean, now that we're in that era of paying them like they do the NFL, you violate some type of unsportsmanlike penalty with all that, you're going to get fined, and the school's going to get fined. Yeah, $100,000 fine to them is like paying $10. That isn't a big fine to me personally, but that's just me. So keep your eye out on a potential show this Thursday. I am going under the knife tomorrow to have my right knee replaced. 3 years ago, I had my left knee. Now I'm going to have my right knee replaced tomorrow at about 8:15 tomorrow morning, or somewhere in that category. It is an outpatient procedure, so no hospital stay, which is great. And I will be recovering tomorrow evening and Wednesday, and hopefully we'll be up to getting a opportunity to talk a little bit more about the college football playoffs, as well as the recruiting signing day festivities and such. So stay tuned to my X feeds and things of that nature. I appreciate you guys being with me again this evening. It's been fun. It's been a great year. Let's play one more and see what happens, because now you get an opportunity. Those who win stay up. Those who lose go home, and everything with all that. Things of that type of year doesn't always come to fruition like it has. And appreciate the good luck. Yep, I'll need all the luck I can, because this old dog doesn't have any new tricks that he can learn or do anything with all that. And I appreciate your guys' thoughtfulness there with everything. And yeah, John, as far as we know, there was not one player that has the police blotter this year. And as far as we know, there hasn't been anything that I've heard or seen or scuttlebutt about that. So that's something to talk about with those kids, because that's the type of kid SIG has brought into this program, that not only are they responsible to themselves, but every man in the locker room, to the right, to the left, and to the man at the top. That says a lot about his evaluation of the kids he's bringing into his program, when you don't have that. And all kids mess up. There's not a kid out there that doesn't screw up. Doesn't mean they're bad. It's just that you don't need the black eye and stuff. So it's a great year to be 11-1. It's a great year to be a part of the college football playoffs. It's a great year because Indiana has never had a year like this. And whatever we got from this point forward is icing on a cake. Be respectful and gracious that they're in this opportunity, and the kids have earned it, as well as the coaches. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned to my X feed as it pertains to Thursday. I appreciate your best wishes, guys, and we'll talk before the holidays. For now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith. This has been the Hoosier Football Tailgate right here on Believe.